This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here today. It's bucket list time. I get to check this off of my bucket list, and I'm actually speaking to this next author. It's my pleasure to welcome Victor Davis Hanson. He has written so many books. Like if you Google him, the list of books that he's written it's amazing. And then on top of that, he has this New York Times bestseller by Victor Davis Hanson, The Case for Trump. And this is his latest book. You can find it at all major retailers, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. And I guarantee you're going to want to read it. I already have it on my list to actually purchase. And I got the Audible version, the audiobook. So I'm finishing up a couple of other books, and then I'll be launching into this one. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this. Why did you write The Case for Trump?
Well, I looked at most of the books that were out there since he was elected, maybe 30, and they were either that he was a saint or a sinner, but I wanted as a historian to analyze how he got elected, how he did so well for being the first president without military and political experience, at least in his first 2 years, why people hate him so much, and what's the prognosis, what does it look like in 2020?
So when you talk about 2020, the liberals like to paint President Trump as being very weak, not having a chance, and most of the media are already down talking the economy. If they can get the economy to dip into a recession and then, hobble the president and the media, they feel like they have a strong chance of putting one of their candidates up against him and prevailing. I don't see it that way at all. My view from the ground is that the president is very strongly in a position where he could win in 2020. What did you find when you were looking at this?
Oh, in the book I pointed out, I tried to look at analytics that were unbiased. So usually a president in a second term is either a person who's not elected to the second term or has a failed second term. It's because of an economic downturn of George H.W. Bush or Jimmy Carter, or it's a scandal like Richard Nixon, or it's an unpopular war that plagued the Bush administration, George W. Bush. I don't see Trump getting into an unpopular war. I think the economy is going to stay strong through 2020, and with the Mueller investigation, I sort of said that in the book. I said explicitly that there would be no collusion found. He's not going to have any of these problems that most incumbents have going for re-election. The second thing is, if you look at Barack Obama or Bill Clinton's popularity at the beginning of their third year, it's almost identical to what Trump's is, between 43 and 44 plus. And then if you look at their House and Senate performance in the first midterms, Trump did actually better. He picked up 2 Senate seats. They lost respectively 8 and 6, and then they lost a lot more House seats. So by historical margins, remember that Clinton killed Bob Dole in the 1996 election, and Barack Obama pretty easily defeated Mitt Romney. So Trump is doing better than the 2 most recent presidents that were reelected, and he doesn't have any of these historical albatrosses around their neck that stop incumbents. So it's really going to depend on who's going to run against him, and it looks to me like whoever it is going to get tagged with this progressive agenda of permissible infanticide, the Green Deal, 90% income tax, Medicare for everybody, abolish ICE, tear down the wall, reparation, cancel student debt, and none of those issues poll 50%. And so he's going to be running against somebody that's going to be either partially or total identified with these very unpopular issues. And then he's not going to have Mueller, and he's getting better at what he does. He tweets sometimes indiscriminately, but he's speaking better, and his team, especially in foreign policy, Pompeo and Bolton, are more in sync with him. So I think he's got about a 65% chance of winning, even with a media that's running consistently 85 to 90% negative.
So I love that you're basing this off of analysis, because that it's one thing to have a gut feeling, but it's another thing to actually look at what other presidents have done and compare it. And that's what you do so well as a historian and as an author. But I'm wondering, what is your take on the reaction? So we've seen the Mueller report finally come out. finally the conclusion to that just 2 years of uncertainty. We see the end of that, and we see the media and the Democrats all kind of moving together in unison to delegitimize A.G. Barr, who just wrote basically a summary. He just summarized it, and they're saying they have to see it. We know they can't see all of the Mueller report because there are other investigations ongoing. There's some information that's classified, so they'll never be able to see every single page of it. Where do you see them going with that?
Well, I think a small group, the initial two reporters, David Corn and Michael Eiskopf, were the ones that leaked the dossier before the election and did a lot of damage to his polls went down by about 3 points right before 7 days before the election and 8 days in one case. And they both come out and said that the dossier was wrong and that all of that was unfounded. They've kind of not quite apologized, but there's some people who feel that if they don't apologize or they don't say that they were wrong, their reputations in the media are going to destroy it. But that's a minority. I think you're right. I think the majority feel that they can just double down, just like they did with the dossier. And remember, they've tried everything: the 25th Amendment, the Elements Clause, the Logan Act, to warp the Electoral College voting, that palace coup that McCabe and Rosenstein were engaged in. So in their way of thinking, just these all have failed, so Mueller failed, so now they're going to go on to House and Senate investigations or, his tax returns or something. They'll never do that. But that's a symptom of a larger problem they have, that they don't have an agenda. So they can't say, we can give you 5% GDP, or we can give you even more record low minority unemployment, or we can give you more oil production, or we can open up more natural gas. They can't say any of that. So they're stuck on this agenda that, it's banning internal combustion engines or permitting people to kill a baby after it leaves the birth canal. And then meanwhile, Trump's got he's got a pretty good message to Democratic constituents. He can tell swing voters, suburban, voters, that the world is safer. I'm dealing with North Korea. I'm trying to get out to restore triangulation with Russia to use it against China. I'm clamping down on China. You can tell minority voters, if you're a Latino, you can say, I don't like this anti-Catholic stuff that Dianne Feinstein and Camilla Harris are saying. I don't like radical abortion. I don't like cheap labor competing with your wages. I don't like this identity politics that hurts your schools. When you get illegals coming in, they overwhelm their schools. They're gang members. You can tell the African Americans. We have record low unemployment. Abortion has devastated the African American community, and that came out of the Margaret Sanger eugenicist movement. And I don't like that. I want to make sure that as many African American kids can be born as possible. And I don't like the anti-Catholic. I don't like the anti-religion message of the Democrats. So I think he can pick up an additional 10 to 15% of the minority vote in some of the swing voters. And if he does, then the Democrats don't have an answer because they're so heavily leveraged into identity politics, and they've lost the other constituencies. So I think he's got a very good chance if he plays his cards right. And so far, he's done pretty well for a person without political experience.
So, Victor, you're making a point that I think it can't be elevated high enough. I think people discount it, especially on the left, but even some on the right discount the unique position that the president is in because he is an outsider, and he's proven that he's willing to do things and say things and even tick off people that others, they're not willing to do those things. They're not willing to tick certain people off. And they're not willing to go against the common orthodoxy that this is the way Republicans behave, this is the way they speak, this is the way they operate when they're attacked, this is how hard they fight before they give up. All of that's now out of the window. And you say in your book that America needs the outsider Trump to do what normal politicians would not and could not do. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's right. Remember that Trump had the suit on, the orange hair, the long tie, the Queen's weird accent. But boy, if he came to Bakersfield, California, or he went into Atlanta, or he went into Cincinnati, he didn't change. Every one of these politicians, Hillary adopted a Southern accent whenever she went south of the Mason-Dixon line. When Obama went into the inner city, he sounded like he grew up in Detroit. Mm-hmm. When Joe Biden did, he did the same. John Kerry put on camouflage as if he was like a hunter. But Trump, whatever he was authentic. He was also empathetic. He started talking about our inner city youth, our vets, our farmers. And then he went into West Virginia, which had been devastated by the Obama coal leaks. And Hillary Clinton had just left in 2016, said, you're going to shut down this industry. We're going to put you all out of work. We're going to build solar panels. And he said, I love big, beautiful, clean coal. So it was very strange that somebody who had no reputation for being empathetic actually cared more about the working class than the traditional Republican or Democratic politician.
You know, so that's one of the stories that I love about if you watch any of The Apprentice, you know, way back when he had his own TV show, or if you've read any of the things that have been written about him and his relationship with the kids, is that he raised the kids from his first marriage with Ivana Trump. Those children were raised on the construction sites. So you have the daughter, Ivanka, and the two boys, Eric and Don Jr., were, you know, putting on hard hats, and all summer long, instead of going to the Hamptons or, you know, kind of lolling around because their dad was rich, they were on the construction sites learning about building buildings and doing projects. And so they would know some of the general contractors and the foremen and those guys. They knew them. And the relationship that their father had with them was an example of how to treat people. And so these are stories that the mainstream media would have told if Donald Trump was Barack Obama. If he was a hardcore liberal, they would tell those stories. But because he's not, no one knows them. But they kind of go to the heart of what you're explaining about his ability to empathize with people who he shouldn't be able to because he's so, you know, rich and detached, which isn't the truth.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think our traditional background of a president, whether it's Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, has been Harvard or Yale Law School. And that doesn't give you the experience of dealing, if you're a builder in Manhattan, with unions, environmental groups, local groups, social activists, the city council, all sorts of people that make it almost impossible to build anything. And yet he did. So he had the type of experiences and practicality, and he had to work with unions and working people, and he liked them. And so it wasn't abstract. And I think the Republican Party had kind of got into the mood that they would rather lose nobly than win ugly. So that when Barack Obama ran against John McCain, and McCain said, I'm not going to mention Reverend Wright, or Mitt Romney was in the second debate with Candy Crawley, and he didn't object really when she hijacked that as a moderator. I don't think Trump would have done that. So I think a lot of people said, you know, he may be chemotherapy and it might be toxic, but he's going to kill the cancer first. And we don't, he'll say anything, anywhere, anytime to anybody, and we need that. We need somebody who fights back. We don't want any more Marcus of Queensbury rural Republicans. And that got the establishment angry because they would rather lose nobly and hang out with the people of their like class in Washington and New York, but not other people. They said, you know what, we're hurting. We need a good economy. You guys, whether you win or lose, it's all the same to you. You don't have any skin in the game.
You know, Victor, I call them the sweater vest wearers. And, you know, God bless them, because there's nothing wrong with wearing a sweater vest or being principled or, you know, not wanting to get into muddy fights. But we're past that now. And I one of the things that I noticed, I've been able to hear the president speak to different groups on, I think, 3 or 4 occasions. And one of the things I've noticed about him that is pretty amazing is how he's able to moderate his comments to empathize with the people he's speaking with without being phony or kind of pandering to them. And I don't think it's an act when he says we need to improve our cities or we need to bring jobs back. When he's speaking about that, I really feel like he has a connection to the American people that others just haven't had. And I know that the left discounts it, but it's real. It's the same kind of retail political capital that Barack Obama had in spades, even though he kind of faked the accent. But he was able to motivate Democrats and touch their emotions. And Donald Trump was able to do that with Republicans.
I think so. I think people, even when they don't entirely agree with him, they at least feel that what you hear and what you see is what you get, and that he really will try to open up Anwar like he promised, or build the Keystone Pipeline like he promised, or get out of the Iran deal like he promised, or try to address the repeal of Obamacare and secure the border, whether he's successful or not, they don't feel that he's, you can keep your doctor or you can keep your insurance plan or read my lips, that most politicians say things that they don't have any intention of honoring. So, and that's the disconnect, because we were told, he's been married 3 times, he's had all kinds of financial up and downs, he exaggerates. But what I think he really represents is that he doesn't have those sterling credentials as Obama did or Clinton did or Bush did, and he succeeds, and he is succeeding better than all 3 of them in their first 2 years, then they feel that's a referendum on them and their class. They think, wow, he doesn't listen to Council on Foreign Relations. Wow, he doesn't talk to the Brookings Institution. Wow, he doesn't call up the Harvard government, but yet the economy's booming and we're getting out of that Iran flaw deal. So what does this mean about us? And I think that's one of the reasons they dislike him so much, besides the class disdain. They just feel that he represents a refutation of everything they embody and illustrate.
Mm. I hear the music. You're one of my favorites, mainly because of what you've just demonstrated here right now, which is your knowledge. It's far ranging, and you do all of the work behind it, the writing and all of that. And it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. Really an honor. Victor Davis Hanson, author of your latest best-selling book, The Case for Trump. Thank you for joining us. I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right.